Furthering, there we go, here now. Fine.
All right, thank you, everyone, and welcome to the December 13th regular meeting of Central Oregon Community College Board of Directors. We will start with the native lands acknowledgement. COCC would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land our campuses reside on are the original homeland of the Wasco and the Warm Springs people. They ceded this land to the U.S. government in the Treaty of 1855. The Paiute people were forcibly moved to the Warm Springs Indian Reservation starting in 1879. It's also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds, and the Klamath tribes claim it as their own. Descendants of these original people are thriving members of our communities today. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. And we will move to a roll call. Jen.
Yep, Joe Krenowitz,
Present.
Laura Crosby Cooper,
Here.
Alan Unger,
Here.
Erica Scaffold, here, Jim Porter,
Here.
Aaron Mers, here, Aaron Cook Morgan, here, Lori Chesley, here, Alicia Moore, here, Anne Marie Hamlin, here, Michael Lalonde,
Here.
Laura Bomey, here, Zach Boone,
Here.
Kathleen Knutson,
Here.
Andrew Davis,
Here.
Corey Darling,
Here.
Christy Walker, here, Paul Taylor,
Here.
Kyle Matthews,
Here.
and Jen Kovitz, done in the role.
Thank you, Jen. Do we have any agenda changes? Noting none, we will move to public comments. Do we have any public comments?
None were submitted.
None submitted. Thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes of November 8th? If so, Chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Erin.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, indicate by saying no. Noting none, motion carried unanimously. And now we move to information items, and I believe this is just a monthly budget status. Does anyone have questions for Kathleen? Noting none, we'll move to new hire reports. Anyone with questions for Laura? Comments also welcome, of course. Noting none, I believe we have a presentation from Christy and Alicia on DEI, B plan and activities.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having us. For those of you who haven't met Christy Walker, Christy's our Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the college. And we wanted to give you an update on wanted to give you an update on our current work around equity, inclusion, and belonging at COCC, which includes not only our plan, but a very high-level overview of many of the activities that we're engaged in. As always, feel free to chime in with any questions. But to get us started, we want to do what I say a little walk down memory lane. Right? Where have we come over the years? And this goes way back. I promise I'm not going to give you a year-by-year account because there's some pretty big leaps in here. But starting in the mid-'80s, the college, actually long before, a little bit before the 80s, was given a trust to start a Native American program at the college. Anything to further Native American education. And we embodied that by starting what we still have today as our Native American Student Support Program. In the mid-'90s, we started our Latinx College Prep Program. It was a statewide initiative at the time called Oregon Leadership Institute. And that's since expanded in many, let's see, first on screen. That's since been disbanded at a lot of Oregon colleges, but COCC has maintained that over these years and has built it into what you'll hear later in other presentations, a very robust program. And I do the little dotted line because that was the main activities that were happening back at the time. And for me, COCC really started engaging in equity work around 2000. Right? That's the first time that we had a diversity committee. Before that, it was our international student committee. I was part of both of those and part of the group that helped establish our diversity committee and shift that focus. And with that, the college had its very first DEI. In 2006, by that point, the DEI committee said, you know what, we're doing an awful lot of work. A lot of us are given a lot of hours of our time every week, and combined, that's well over, well more than what a position would normally do. And so we advocated for, received funding to create our first staff position dedicated to an actual, well, at the time, multicultural activities coordinator. 2010, we started with our Latinx program, with this one specifically focusing on college students. So you can see, and you'll see this emerge with the other pieces now. We have some programs that happen in the high school, that's the college prep ones, and then programs that support students once they transition to be a student at COCC. In 2010, this is the first time the college recognized DEI in some of our planning work, right? And we adopted it as an institutional value. In 2011, we started our Native American College Prep program. 2015, we shifted the half-time multicultural activities coordinator position to a full-time director of diversity and inclusion. And then we started our Afrocentric program that's both combined college prep and high school in 2020. And that's by no means not all of it, by no means shows all the work. Wow, I had a Diet Coke, you could tell in my copy. That's by no means all the work that we've done over the time, and you'll see some of that emerge as Christy and I share the plan and our current activities. But the other dates worthy of note is in 2014 is the first time we did a college climate survey specifically around issues affecting underrepresented students. In 2017, the legislature passed what's called House Bill 2864, which looked at cultural competency in higher education institutions in the state of Oregon, or public universities and community colleges, and what we do to increase the cultural competency of our employees. And then 2018, as we started working with that, Christy and her team were asked to serve kind of as coaches, mentors, role model programs to help some of Oregon's smaller institutions figure out how they could start up programs much like we did, right? When we started our programs, we were about the size of what many of our smaller peer institutions are. And so wanted to show a progression at a time that they too, despite size, can incorporate this work into their institution. And so she's done a great job along with her predecessor of helping other institutions in this work. A side note, you'll hear more about 2864 later. Every other year with that, we do bring a mandatory report to the board. That report is kind of perfunctory. We're required to do it, but you'll hear a lot about DEI work in other presentations throughout the year too. Really quick walk back the last 40 plus years. Any questions or comments on this component of it?
I don't think I realized that the director position was from 2015. That feels like, where were we in the process of? Oh gosh, what question am I formulating? It seems like we got on board pretty quickly. Well, recognizing
this position of multicultural activities coordinator worked into a director position as we started to grow our program. So we've been on board far, I think, in a pretty advanced way, or early stages of community colleges having staff to be able to really embrace this work. And then recognize as our programs were going, we needed to elevate that position. And as we started growing as an institution and those responsibilities grew, why we need to decrease that position, not only in FTE, but in its title.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense because I feel like it shows as an organization that we care about it and that we're doing work around it. It doesn't mean that we're perfect, right? But like, it's nice to see a timeline.
Yeah, it was fun to put that together too.
And I've been in the director role since 2019.
So one of the things that prompted this presentation was some questions that our board had at one of our meetings, or maybe at one of the retreats, around what's our work around equity? How do we measure our progress here? What are the things we're doing? What's our planning work? And so our diversity committee at the college every couple of years reviews our plan and makes updates to it, and has done so most recently in this past year. So Christy's going to walk you through the plan, and then I'm going to talk to you about the assessment side of it all. All right, keep going. Let's go.
Okay, so we set it up into 5 different goals, and there's a lot of different components and activities that are part of these goals. And I'm not going to get into too in depth into what those are, but I just want to give you kind of an overview of what each goal means. And so the first one is college mission and goal. And this is really to reflect college-wide and different departments and different disciplines, making sure that each mission reflects equity in the work that we're doing. And so part of that initiative is, my team and the diversity committee working with folks from the different departments, making sure, doing consistent reviews, making sure that these things are present, but not only present, but also have. Oh, and to tie it back to the, because one of the questions we know was, how does this align with the strategic plan? And we determined that it ties back to access. So then access and representation. This one is about really thinking about who our students are, who our constituents are within Central Oregon, who do we serve, and do we reflect that in our employees, in our faculty, in our staff, in our students? Are we recruiting students to match the demographics of Central Oregon? And so it's having a real focus on that. In particular, you'll notice the culturally inclusive hiring practices, which is also one of the main activities for the new strategic plan as well. And so this one is, we tied it to college sustainability. So college climate, this is, Alicia was just referring to this into the college climate survey. And this really monitors and asks, again, the people that we serve, the students, but also, again, our staff, because we have to include our staff and our employees when we think about the people that we serve. And so it's making sure, do you feel represented? Do you feel seen? How are you being supported? Really asking those difficult questions. And then analyzing the answers that we get, and then trying to come up with initiatives and different just ideas of how we can really implement those and further that.
And the examples that we're showing in the green boxes attached to these goals are solely examples of other activities that the diversity committee monitors in the full plan itself. We don't want to list everything here, and it's certainly not everything that we do at college, and you'll see a sample list of that.
It's more like a snapshot of things that are aligned with these different goals. And then education and training. This one I think is a little more obvious in the title, because it's really about, again, do people know what this means, right? We throw the word equity around a lot, but do people understand it? I was in an interview situation where we asked someone to define equity, and they talked about it in terms of buying a house, and that was, they were correct. Yeah, they were correct. And so it's not making an assumption that everybody understands what these terms mean and how they affect ourselves, but also, again, people around us, the people we serve in our positions, all these different things. And so really making sure that we can't expect people to know if we don't provide the resources for them to be able to learn. To me, going a little short here, but to me, it's one thing to say that we believe in something, but if we don't provide the resources to be able to support that, then we're not doing our job. And I think that this really reflects in this. And so we have several different trainings and initiatives that we offer campus-wide, in particular for staff, because they're the ones, again, that serve our students. And so if our faculty, if our administrators, if our classified staff, anyone that works at the college is not aware of what these things mean and how they can affect our students, then again, we're doing a disservice and we're not doing our jobs. So. And then evaluation and recognition. We think it's important to honor those that are doing this work. It's hard. Equity work is hard. I'm tired all the time. I fully admit that, because it weighs on you emotionally, mentally, physically. And so are we actually like reaching out and telling people, like, we see this, we see you doing this work, and we see the students see you. And so with that, having the Diversity Education Award, having the Diversity Achievement Award, we have different ways to be able to show that. And then we also, in our evaluations, right, making sure that we're asking those questions, like, what have you done to support the principles of community? How is your job in your role? How are you related to this? And so it's really very poignant questions that tie all back to this.
And to Christy's point of this work is hard, we want to celebrate the achievements that people do, and giving a sneak peek of a January information item that'll be coming your way. Our annual season of nonviolence is coming up, and Charlotte Gilbride from Advancement and Christy are the primary coordinators of a lot of that work. And the theme this year is celebrating joy and equity, right? To try and say this is important and heavy work, but there's also joy to be found in that work as well. So when it comes to assessment, how do we know we're making progress towards this? First, we were going to start talking about some of the indicators that are in the DEIB plan. And then we realized there's a lot of other places at the college that we measure ourselves in terms of our equity work. And so just to bring you the indicators or share that information with you that's in the plan itself is a very narrow slice. We're not going to give you all the indicators and measurements and targets associated with each of these because each one of these is at least its own presentation. But this is to share with you that within strategic planning, in our DEIB plan itself, in our student and employee climate surveys, the legislative report I just talked to you about, diversity in the hiring practices pieces, this is information we bring to the board on a regular basis. And it's not always just coming from Christy and me, it's coming from multiple areas across the college. And so you'll be seeing some of our progress towards DEI work in all of these presentations as they're staggered throughout the year. All of these, just looking on the list, except maybe the biennial report, are available on our website. So if people wanted to get into these in more detail ahead of time, you certainly can, but you will be seeing these in multiple pockets throughout the institution and throughout the college. The one piece I like to point out here, especially around great college to work for, as an employee climate survey, and this gets back to some questions some folks asked earlier in the work session. One of the areas this college is rated the highest on by employees is its commitment to DEI work. And we, in that survey, it's a national survey, we have 10 questions that we can customize. I think we did 5 or 6 around equity this last couple of times. And our scores were continually in the 90% for how well employees believe we're doing this work. So I think that is something we're celebrating as an institution. Because that really does reflect this commitment back to Eric's point from earlier that's been around for quite some time. So switching gears, there's a lot of detail we've been going through, but Christy's going to give you a high-level summary of some of the equity work that we do, not only in her area, but throughout the college and in the communities.
So our department, so under the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, we have the Native American program and the college prep program, the Latinx program, the college prep program, the Afrocentric program, the college prep program, and in development, we have an LGBTQ student program. And so these are the ones that are currently in place. But there's so many other pieces that go to it. And I just want to I know we keep saying it, but I have a lot of peers throughout the state that, you know, we meet once a month and we talk, and I'm really proud to always say that I'm one of the only people that has a team. And that says a lot, again, about the commitment that COCC has put into this work. The fact that when we're fully staffed, there's 6 of us, hopefully in the near future 7, that really says something, again, about commitment and the work that we get to do to help serve others. So I really want to highlight that. But I do also agree with what Erica said, that we're not perfect. One of my things that I'm always worried about is complacency, and I don't believe that we see that here. I think that we should continue to move the needle when it changes. And so thinking about some different programming, as you can see that we have all our wonderful heritage months, but for us, it's important not to celebrate a culture just during that heritage month. So while we do have an extra highlight in those moments, we're continuously doing programming and doing the ad hoc events, which we hope to see from them.
And in the monthly or regular reports, Jen sends out about important dates and deadlines. Many of these are highlighted in the 30.
And then I do want to highlight Charlotte Gilbride because of the amazing work that she does in partnership to really create Season of Nonviolence. And then we think about our different trainings that we offer. The culturally respectful hiring practices, Safe Zone. Safe Zone is an 8-hour training that is meant to help people really truly be allies for folks within the LGBTQ+ community. And it's a pretty intense training. We talk about a lot of really hard topics, but it's meant to help create a safer space for this particular community. And we created the Safe Zone Lab to complement it because people really wanted tangible experience and to go through different scenarios. And so folks who go through Safe Zone training now have the opportunity to do an additional training so that they can really get more experience. Because when you take Safe Zone, it's not like someone's going to come up to you right away. That's not the way that it works. And so it's to keep the training going, to keep the information coming and keeping it relevant. So I do want to say that within these, the newest one in development that will be coming for in winter is a workshop on ableism. Well, that would be much. And then there's all these other things. It was funny because Alicia was like, "Okay, Christy, fill this out," and we had to take some stuff out. There's so many things, that people are doing, and not just my department, and I think that's really important to say, because it's not just my department that's doing this work. It really is, there are so many folks throughout the college, that are very intentional about the work that they're doing, so that we can again continue to move this forward, and it's not siloed. It's, and as I'm sure you've probably seen in our new strategic plan, equity is embedded throughout it. And, that's something to be very proud of. And then community involvement. This was another one where Alicia had to do some of this stuff because it was just way too much. It was, a lot of things that throughout the college, that we are doing and that we are a part of with our community, whether it's, local or in our surrounding areas. Some pretty amazing partnerships that we've developed and created, again, to show that COCC is involved and we're a part of the community. Again, I know you're probably going like, wow, that's a lot. Well, I'm hoping that's what you're saying. But there is always more.
So some key takeaways is we just threw a lot of information at you. First, I think hopefully you can recognize that our DEI values, principles, beliefs are integrated throughout the college, in the classroom, in institutional operations, in student support services, in activities and events. And it really is, if we could list everything, this presentation or those slides, they multiple pages long. So it's not only there, but we're also actively measuring our progress towards our goals at many levels in this institution. Not only at the strategic plan level and our diversity, equity, and belonging plan level, but then a lot of different departments, different events, different unit review plans, different assessment activities that are happening. It's going throughout the institution. And where it's possible, we talked about this in our conversation on equity or indicators earlier, is that we disaggregate our student employee data where we have that information available. Right? One of the, and I always put that information where we have it available. For example, one of the things we started collecting, I think it was about a year ago, was first generation student data. We're not really sharing that widely yet, because until we get a couple of years underneath our belts, it's really hard to say this is representative of our students. But what we usually say in about 2 years is when we can start cycling that information into our regular report. So you'll see some things to review in that regard. So with all of that, questions or comments or feedback?
I have a comment. So yesterday, we had an Oregon Community College Association DEI meeting. We have them once a month, and Christy's there and I'm there. And one of the questions they asked us was, how does your board engage in DEI work? And I could tell them just a little bit that it's in our mission, it's in our strategic plan, it's in a lot of our policies. I wished I had seen this before. I could have said a lot more. But I just want to shout out to Christy. She's got a lot of passion. You can just tell it in her voice. And more colleges in Oregon are now hiring DEI coordinators. And Christy ends up being one of their helps them develop the work and supports them. And so I think we're doing a great job, not only at the local level, but at the state level. So thanks for all the work that you do, Christy.
Thank you, Robert.
And I'll add that the word connection piece that on Christy and her statewide counterparts are just started a conversation last week, about how they can better tie into the OCCA conference, perhaps doing a pre-conference workshop on DEI training, specifically geared towards board members' roles in colleges and understanding it, or even some one kind of what I call 101 to foundational work. So that's a conversation that will come back to that group we were just mentioning. Well, thank you. And stay tuned because there will be more in the coming months for sure.
Couple of questions.
Go ahead.
I just took a look at the diversity plan goals, learning outcomes, strategies, measurement tools, just to try to prepare for our discussion today. And it sounds like we have a really big footprint in terms of our DEI work, both within the college, within the community, within the state. And I feel like there's we seem to need to be standing out in Oregon in our work. We didn't see very much tonight about how our DEI work is changing numbers or and outcomes on our campus. And when I look at the plan and I look at the measurement tools, I'm curious about some of where we're at on some of these benchmarks we might have set for ourselves in that plan. So things like, you went through the 5 roles, but hiring statistics, we actually did have a presentation about that not long ago, I think. And trainings, all these things, how are we doing on these goals that we've set for ourselves? Are we meeting the goals that we've set? Culturally inclusive hiring practices are one of our action plan or projects on the list for the next few years. But are there other things that should be a really bigger piece of our strategic planning in terms of those action projects that we may not be meeting yet?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
You start and all.
Yes, I think that's a really good question because some of the things are not as easily measurable as others, as far as, getting the quantitative data that somebody might want. And I can give a lot of anecdotes on where I see this happening, right? And I'm not going to necessarily get into that right now, but I think that we can share that while we might have more reports of incidents happening, what that tells me is that students are feeling safe to say something, right? And so I think that sometimes it really depends on the perspective that you put towards it, right? And I don't think that necessarily we measure how many reports we have now. I just mean like students in my office coming and telling me and asking me to help them advocate for themselves and things like that. And that's not something that we fully measure, but we measure it through our college climate survey, right? And there, of the respondents, we're in the high 80s too. I would say even 90% of students that say that they feel safe and represented and in the classroom in other areas. And so that we can absolutely measure, which we're the diversity committee and I are actually working on the current report for that. So which you'll all get eventually. So that's one that again that we measure with the hiring again, and we are working towards that with the trainings. That one we measure again through evaluations and participation. I think that, I'm not going to try to make an excuse and say that COVID put a wrench in things, but COVID put a wrench in things. And we had a lot of folks participating prior to the COVID shutdown, but even then we changed some of our trainings to be remote so that people could still have access and still be able to, and even Season of Nonviolence was completely remote. And to make sure that people still had access to this work in an accessible way. And we're starting to see participation numbers rise again, but we're not quite where we were prior to the COVID lockdown, I would say, but they are right.
By the way, Erin, when you're talking specifically about benchmarks and indicators that are for the plan itself, this plan was just refreshed and the diversity committee kind of almost finished its work in late spring, but really just kind of put a bow on it so we can share it here today in this last month or so. So now it's time then to, just like in the strategic plan, to say, okay, here's we're at the plan. Now let's reassess our benchmarks. Let's reassess our targets. So that piece, the actual numbers attached to all of that isn't visible in what you see.
Gotcha.
Because
This isn't
just not
new.
there yet.
This is new.
So-
This thing that's online. It was just created this year. You're saying?
Well, it was created last year, but fine tuned because there's so many moving parts to it, right? Because again, it's not siloed to just the diversity committee, DEI, like instruction is heavily involved in it, like so many different areas, anybody that does evaluations, right? So, we have to make sure that we're talking to all the key players, making sure that everybody understands that everyone's on board. People have questions about it. So it's, in order to really make it an equitable plan, we can't just be like, this is what you're doing and do it.
Right.
So much of it is making sure that we're communicating with everybody, so that we can have buy-in from college to make sure that we're taking steps necessary.
And then more formal reporting out on the progress of that plan will follow.
About what percentage of staff have had any kind of training or participated in training?
That's a question I can't really answer because of different folks at different times participating different.
We actually honestly tried to pull that, getting ready, anticipating that would be a question.
Yeah.
And, you know, we can say, I'm gonna make this up, but I think I'm pretty close. Culturally respectful hiring practices over the years, several hundred people have participated. But we don't have a very easy electronic way to track that, so we manually have to go, oh, this person left the college, this person retired. So really whittling that down, is really difficult as well. So it's one of those things that back to the strategic plan conversation earlier, is it, what did I say, easy to track or easy to manage? That's one that's really not, but something we need to keep an eye towards.
Yeah, and we did offer it already twice this year.
The numbers are pretty sizable when you add them all up, but who is actively engaged as an employee right now, that's the hard part, because that's not.
Would it be possible to offer that allyship training for board members?
The allies for equity. You know, I think we, like, Alicia and Lori and I have talked about this. I don't know, Lori, if you wanna answer this.
No, I'm gonna let you
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I am very open to offering new trainings to the board. I think that, when I talked to Lori about, she was teaching something. I think that I feel very comfortable, you know, talking with you all. I think that, you know, you're part of my team, I'm part of your team, and I think that,
The last training you did for us was phenomenal.
I think that is due, right?
It's excellent.
I mean, I hate to put you on the spot, right? And so I want you to be comfortable, and you actually don't have to answer that question tonight. So I'm just saying, it really sounds like a fantastic program, and I think we could probably benefit from it. At least I feel like I could.
Well, that's where that conversation around, can we do something even statewide attached to the OCCA conference, and maybe perhaps do something like that. If it would be helpful, we could give you a list of kind of the ones we already have ready to go trainings, the amount of time it takes, and a brief description.
so that information is actually on the website. So, but I think, I'm very open to discussing what would meet the needs.
I thought you catered the training really well to us, right, in our role as a board.
I thought-
It was.
Wonderfully.
Mhm.
I remember what I said now. I'm like, what did I say? Besides speak your truth. I said to Christy, that, I don't know how it came up before training came up, and I said, you know, if you're not entirely comfortable doing training for our board, we can always bring someone in to do it. Because it just may be a little bit awkward, right?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And Christy's like, no, I don't have any problem with it. And I have to say, my experience of Christy is she speaks truth to power. So I'm like, okay, I just wanted to ask.
I learned, and I don't think I was alone. I learned a lot from that last training, and I think
Yeah.
it would be great to.
I think all of us would like, I mean, knowing the person, we would all like it, so.
Well, I'm definitely open to having conversations and seeing what we can do as a team.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, what are we doing for DEI in terms of like board meetings? Just in terms of equity and inclusion, am I allowed to ask, you know? I apologize.
Okay, this is one of our students.
Sorry.
Hi.
I didn't realize I was.
Oh, they all have to learn, I have to learn too.
Yeah.
But it is very fun to have students, so thank you,
Uh-huh.
especially from Fred.
If board members have an opportunity or staff have an opportunity after the meeting, if you want to drop them, please, those of you who can, please stick around so that we can help our student out. Thank you.
And we're happy to answer that too, so. We'll.
And coincidentally, we've been talking about how we can get more input from students while we're here.
So please
So they
stick
might have
around.
questions for you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or answer for folks?
You mentioned we will probably stay following this and talk about this again in the future. When do you think that might be? As we move this plan forward, the measurements and stuff like that, when might be the next time we connect about all this?
But I mean, just off the top of my head, a couple of the things I know are on the docket for in your future. At some point, we'll bring forward the I just lost my train of thought. The student climate survey results. The equity and inclusion plan, we usually do something about every other year on that. Off years, we do the legislative report, which also talks to a lot of our work. The strategic plan stuff will be forthcoming at some point. Great colleges work where we don't administer again until, we do that this spring. So we'll probably bring that to you 6 months or so afterwards. So all of this is scattered throughout the year. The DEIB plan itself, that's something Christina and I need to talk together about how we start formalizing reporting out on that, because it is. While the diversity committee endorses it, helps mold it, that is almost as big as the strategic plan in terms of getting data from across the college, because so many people have ownership in some of those outcomes. So we haven't necessarily formally reported out on that. So that's a newer, more kind of a maturation of our process. So stuff is coming.
The increase of hiring report comes annually. And I just add that if there is some specific topic that the board would like more information on, happy to do our best to find the information that the information you're looking for. And I know that sometimes different things come up. Board topics come from last place. They come from the board, they come from the chair and the vice chair, they come from me. They also come from people at the college. And so Anne Marie said, I'm going to pick on you again, Anne Marie. Anne Marie last year said, I think it'd be great if we did a presentation on the work we're doing with anti-racist pedagogy. And she and Christy came and did that. So, there's sort of those ad hoc reports.
While we're on that, may I ask a question that's sort of related? We're hearing a lot about, well, you probably all saw the testimony from the Harvard and Penn presidents in front of Congress, and we're hearing about conflict in classes. My daughter happens to be taking a class on the history of Judaism at her university, and said there's been some really incredible discussions. Are we having any conflict around the current war in Israel and Gaza?
Lori sent a message out to all employees, and I sent one out to all the students about that topic. And I've got to think back, it's been a while now. I think I received more positive feedback for that message than I have to any other message that we send out to all students. And by more, it's because it was like, I'm gonna say it was like 10 students replied back.
What was the gist of the message?
Lori did.
It was just like, thank you for saying this. And I remember something you told me a student said, why can't both sides just stop? Just stop it.
But very grateful for how supportive the college was, how not only diplomatic, but also embedding our values into that discussion. We talked in both of them, we mentioned our principles of community, which is a piece that we talk about how we engage with one another, both in the classroom, both as students to students, employee to employee. And one of our staff, her husband was taking classes, he had replied to me, I didn't know it was coming from him. He said, I'm taking classes at 3 different institutions right now. You're the first one I got it from, and it was the best word of mouth I got. So,
Did we receive that message?
I'm about to forward it to all of you.
Thank you. Good. You know where this was going.
Yeah, that was on headlines, and Kyle will work with y'all to make sure you have access to that if you don't already. We also, and our Office of Diversity and Inclusion helped with this. We had a faculty member bring in a world class scholar of the Israel-Palestine conflict, who did an 1.5-hour Zoom presentation and Q&A with our community. And we invited anyone, internal, external. It was fabulous. And it was recorded. I believe so, yeah. I can't imagine we did. And just one of the best presentations I've seen. Really great. And I do know, and of course, we're not going to get into a lot of detail. I think there have been some situations in classrooms that we've worked through. Good, but not, it's not widespread. Was MIX, so
I would
tell your
agree with that
truth, Andrew.
assessment. Yeah,
Okay.
it has come up, it hasn't been widespread, thankfully we've been able to navigate working with, just getting students communicating with each other. Really to, I think, come to shared understanding of different perspectives.
And if you haven't met Andrew, Andrew's our director of student campus life and has the responsibility for our student contact process, so. Gets to engage in those kind of conversations.
And if I can just one last comment, I know that we're pushing the time, but to answer your question, Erin, I think that you're gonna start to see in more like informational presentations equity throughout that. So I don't think it's gonna necessarily only be myself or folks from my team or Alicia sharing about these things. I think that you're gonna really start to see it throughout college-wide work, and that's really is the goal. And so it won't necessarily be specific like equity in this thing, but I think that you're gonna start to see that and be able to like recognize that as it comes out.
Is that something we should be asking about when presentations are made to us?
I think that that's a board prerogative. I think that if you do make sure they know ahead of time, because it can be one of the deer in the headlights questions sometimes for people if they're asked to, because you want to make sure that they're thinking about it really thoughtfully.
Yeah.
But I think that you will be pleasantly surprised with the work that people are doing.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Christy and Alicia. We really appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for helping me ask that question too. You had caffeine and I could dinner we didn't say.
Love that. Okay, I think we now have Corey Darling with the campus safety update.
Thank you, Jen. Well, good evening. My name is Corey Garland, and I'm the Director of Campus Safety and Emergency Management. Fairly new to the college, started in April, and just gonna give you kind of a quick update of, where we were and where we are now, and feel free to ask any questions as we move on. Okay, so in February of 2022, Jim Ferreras Consulting did a review of where we were with campus safety. Came up with about 18 or so areas for us to consider and to look at as we moved along. And that's just kind of a high level view of some of the things that he was looking at when he did his review for us. Has everybody had a chance to look at the Ferreras report? It's good, it's comprehensive, it kind of looks at things from a different perspective. So the completed items that we have, of course, we're compliant with Senate Bill 576, which is Kaylee's law. And that addresses the vehicles, the uniforms, our hiring and how we conduct our hiring, our backgrounds, and our psychological assessments of those who are going to be working for us in campus safety. Our roles and responsibilities, the authority that we currently have, and kind of the philosophy as to what we do on campus for the students, the staff, and the faculty. We looked at the training that we do internally, as well as the training that we provide to those on campus. The transparency that we have if we do receive complaints. How are those complaints received, and then how are they handled within the college campus itself? Our professional affiliations, which is what clubs do we belong to? What associations do we belong to? And how do we receive updated training and make sure that we are within best practices as we move forward? And then some of those things that we are looking at and we are moving forward as we look at the Ferreras report. Staffing, I'm going to talk about a little later, but that is going to be kind of one of those things that we constantly look at, evaluate, and try to develop the staffing that is truly needed for all campuses for COCC, which includes Madras, Pineville, Redmond, and Bend. Our policies and procedures, they're a work in progress because we're still looking at how do we operate and what makes sense for us. We're not a law enforcement agency, so we don't need a big binder of policies and procedures, but there are things that we do on a daily basis that need to be out there and provide that guidance. Relationships, internal and external, our relationships with the law enforcement agencies, the district attorney's office, Deschutes County Behavioral Health, St. Charles, et cetera. We have a lot of relationships that we utilize on a daily basis. Our website, how does that look? And there's a lot of things that need updating. We're working through that. We just hired a new person that has some really good skills in that area that are helping us to make sure that our website looks good, it's professional, and provides the information that we really need to get out. But
Sorry, well, I had a question about the relationships.
yeah,
You might remember that we had a little small period of time where we had, I'll call it a complicated relationship with the City of Bend Police Department. Have we moved past that? Are we pretty clear now on what their role is versus our role and how we work together and cooperate?
yeah, so I still have a really good relationship with the Bend Police Department. I actually was.
You might be a good liaison
yeah.
from one to the other.
Chief Krantz has been really good. He's been very supportive of what we're doing.
I've heard a few
here
good
on
things
campus.
about him from you.
Yeah, he's really dynamic. I really enjoy working with him. Very supportive of us. And when we need him to respond, and then what do we handle internally? So that relationship is really strong. One of the things we're working on, and we used to have a resource officer on campus. And due to staffing concerns from Bend PD, we haven't necessarily had that. But he promised me, and he's a good guy. He said that once he gets up to staffing, that position will come back. So we still have that agreement in place. Hiring is complicated for us. It's complicated for law enforcement as well. So we're getting there. Small steps. Emergency preparedness coordinator is one of the things that was in the Ferreris report. We're looking at that seriously. We haven't decided to implement that position as of yet, because we're still looking at our staffing and the services we provide, and does that make sense at this point in time? It's being considered, it's on our radar, so we'll see how that plays out. A campus safety advisory council, we haven't developed that as of yet. And what I found is we have a tremendous amount of resources within the college that help when we have any type of issue that pops up. We're able to usually navigate that issue because we do have an outstanding staff on campus. And then building relationships with safety directors within Oregon. We work really well with OSU Cascades and Liddell. She's fantastic. And then we're branching out and getting information from other campuses as well. And we talk about school research. Any other questions about that?
So if you need to tell everybody a message that you have the capability of texting out to everybody or whacking something out. How do you communicate across the campus when we meet?
You mean like an emergency then?
Yeah.
So we currently have a emergency notification system. It's a RAID product, and we work closely with Jen Kovitz. And when we have a situation that needs to be put out through all campuses, we rely on them to push that out, and it's an instant messaging system. And we'll talk about additional communication systems that we're working on.
Our resource officers,
They're police officers. Yep. So they're not safety, they're actually police officers. They come with all the equipment a police officer would have. And they're in direct communication with.
And the training that a police officer has.
Mostly important, yes. The training, the experience, the education. All that kind of stuff.
And Aaron, you guys are on campus a lot. We can send the board the information on how to sign up for those EMS notices. You'll get them on your phone, email, you get a phone call. So if the board members have not signed up for those, I would encourage.
I
you.
was signed up for it and I was dropped at some point.
Okay, well, we'll,
Purged or.
yeah, that's odd, but we'll take care of
If for whatever reason you've ever said stop once or
Right, right.
anything, it removes you, so we'll look into.
I don't know that word.
Yeah,
But fair.
and we can also troubleshoot that, so, if you re-sign up again. And you've been on it before, just shoot me an email when you do, because we can literally go in and see everyone who signed up,
Okay.
so, like, we can troubleshoot that.
Okay, staffing, currently we have the director position, we just hired an administrative assistant. We have the environmental health and safety specialist, Roger, who's been here for an extensive period of time, got a lot of institutional knowledge, he's great. And then we have 2 campus safety specialists. And like I said, we're looking at our calls for service, and the services we provide to staff, faculty, and students. And we have some thoughts of maybe enhancing our team at this point in time as we move. Hours of operation Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 to 10 p.m. depending on scheduling. And then anytime after that, in the evening hours on weekends, we have a contract company that we utilize for patrols. And we have a call service. So if we get any calls after hours, that notification comes to us. Redmond campus on weekends and late evenings, we have that contract for that third-party service as well. And then Prineville, Madras campuses, we usually are able to get out to those campuses once a week. And then the police departments of Madras, Prineville, and Redmond do offer that emergency support to them. So some of the recent trainings that we have been providing internally to our staff, faculty, and haven't had any students so far. But we do the run, hide, fight standard response protocol. And we've done that this year. And we pushed it out to Redmond, Madras, Prineville, and the Bend campus.
Corey, can I ask you a question about that? I just had a personal experience. My daughter was in the building next door to the shooting at UNLV. And what was a really disturbing incident was that the professor just immediately went under his desk and left the students to try to figure out what to do.
Oh my goodness.
You know, locking the doors, barricading it. And when I was talking to Lori about this, she said, I'm shocked. I can't believe they don't have training. So where my question is going, there's a question here is, what kind of training do we provide to our faculty and staff as to what to do if an alert goes out, say an active shooter on campus?
Right, so we do have the run, hide, fight training that we do provide, and we've been getting around and providing that training to a lot of the different segments of our campuses. And
So all the campuses, not just
right,
them.
not just Bend.
And it's available to all of our faculty and
Absolutely.
staff and.
Yep, and we made that clear that if there are folks on campus that need that training or want that training, we're happy to provide it at any point in time.
It's not required.
It's not mandatory, but we're here.
It kind of feels like it should be. At this
You know,
point.
that can be really, let me speak out of turn, that can be traumatizing some
It's true,
educational staff. And it's,
depending on people, where people are.
Yeah. and it's, pretty hard to mandate those things. Policy, I mean, it's, some people are really impacted by even confronting that issue, even though we know the issue.
What about providing guidance in the form of like a written advisory? About here are the steps to do in certain, do you know what I mean? I mean, something, because I think about this professor and I actually feel real compassion for him because, you know, he was a guy who's never dealt with this before. All the students knew what to do instantly. I was shocked because they all grew up with training, right?
Exactly.
They even sat together where they couldn't be seen through the windows, and they took an inventory of what weapons or do we have, or what things could be used as weapons, who has special skills, who's got I mean, this just, but the professor was just lost. It completely didn't know what to do. And, you know, I don't think that, well, I don't know, but I mean, I have to wonder that he never saw anything about what to do. You know?
Right, yeah.
He
Um,
did.
Yeah, that's
He
that's
did.
interesting.
He did.
Yeah, that's, you know, and people, when they're under a lot of stress, you know, they're gonna act different ways, right? So.
Right, but
Yeah.
you know, I mean, I think that what the students did proves, you know, they barricaded, they found out the doors couldn't lock, they barricaded them, they turned the lights off. You know, when we get into trauma situations, a lot of us rely on our training.
Sure.
right? And so that's why I'm just, I mean, I understand the point of not wanting to traumatize someone, but I also think we have a duty to make people prepared. And I don't know how we thread that needle, so anyway, I won't belabor the
You
point.
know,
No, it's important.
I will share that when we offered the trainings in Redmond and Madras and Pineville and, we've had remarkable attendance. And
That
supervisors.
actually makes me feel really good.
Yeah, I mean, to Jim's point, it is traumatic and Corey and his team do a great job of setting the tone of. If you ever need to leave the room for any reason, and I had to at some point, and this is my job, right? They do such a good job of setting that tone, but our supervisors bend over backwards to make sure their people can be there, so they're changing people's workloads and scheduled and facilitating that. But also, I think it's almost because it isn't mandatory, it takes the air out of the balloon a little bit, and so
That's
we have
fair.
people showing up, but I've been really just so grateful for the attendance that we've had.
We have had great attendance. It's been really good. And then we do have this information on our website as well. We have a video and then we have the written documentation with the graphics. So if they don't want to attend the training, at least they can go to the website and get that information.
Right. Like when they're locked down for 6 hours, they can. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad everything was okay with your family at UNLV.
She's physically fine.
Yeah, that's still a toll on them for sure. Those-
Corey, are people allowed to bring weapons onto campus, conceal carry, or are we like no weapons campus?
So we do have a policy of no weapons on campus. We might have skipped it here. Other trainings, crisis communication, which is important, fire extinguisher operations, it is kind of amazing how many folks have never operated a fire extinguisher, so we got the chance to do that and it's real life practice. Narcan, AED, stop the bleed, some of those emergency medical procedures that need to be done. We've done some scenario-based training, some winter preparedness training, and then one of the trainings that is in the works right now and is being actually developed is the dating violence and sexual assault awareness. We developed a volunteer program with help of BPD and Jim Porter. We have 11 vetted community members that assist with some of our special events. They provide traffic control, ADA assistance, medical first aid, setup, takedown, and they're just kind of overall good ambassadors for campus safety in the campus as well. So let's talk a little bit about some of the technology that we have on campus for safety. So we have 9 code blue emergency communication systems, right? So you push the button and you get a response on the other end. Kind of like a phone booth, sort of, that's kind of low tech. But we do have 9 of those on campus. Problem with those are they're becoming old. And we're getting to the point where they're getting to that end of life phase. So we've been thinking, how can we supplement our blue phones and provide safety on campus? Most everybody has a smartphone these days. I would say 99 to 100% folks carry a smartphone and unfortunately are really attached to a smartphone. But we are looking at a company that ties in with our emergency notification system. It's used by universities and colleges across the nation, so it's a proven product. It provides a lot of really good information to include virtual escorts. So if you get out of class at night and you're going to your car, you can actually put this into your phone. It tracks you via GPS. And if anything happens, and you don't make it in the time that you have allotted on your phone, it will start making contact information to your emergency contacts, which you can include campus safety, a friend, family members, whomever, to help you with that. So it provides that little extra safety component. It also has anonymous messaging or tip texting, right? So if they see something of concern on campus, they have a friend they're concerned about, they can make it an anonymous tip announcement that comes to us, which is great because that's one of the things that we really want to get ahead of any issues before they actually occur. And so this is one of the features that's going to hopefully enhance our safety. And then it has a lot of other features that we can customize to COCC campuses. That will give them the information they need. So January-ish, we've got our committee that we're going to establish and put this into place. And then some of the just basic systems that we're looking at, all of our access, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
So I have two kids on college campuses right now, so I'm really attuned to this.
Yeah.
If you've got a student, let's say, who had to park really far from the library and is working late-ish,
Yeah.
do we have a system that they can get an escort to their car?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, our officers or specialists will escort them from their class to their vehicle.
Thank you.
So when you request that, how long does it take for somebody to show up?
Usually just right away.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah, we're here on campus and they meet that request and we can connect to that.
But when we're not on campus, I mean,
Yeah.
if it's 11 o'clock at night,
That's,
right?
yeah, that's when we
That-
need
there's
that
no
extra
one, yeah.
safety component that we'll have.
Of the virtual escort, okay.
Some of the systems that we have in place, access control, which is our Linnell system that automatically opens, closes, locks doors. We have some of those panels that need to be replaced that we're working on. We'll have that done 23, 24. Fire alarm panels, we have a 5-year plan in place to replace those fire alarm panels that are becoming obsolete. And then we just renewed a contract for our alarm monitoring, our intrusion, and our duress alarm systems. And then we transitioned from one provider for our cell phones to FirstNet, AT&T. And the reason that is important is they are the nationwide supporter of public safety, and we fall under that umbrella. So if we do have an emergency, and if you've ever been involved in like a wildland fire where all of the phone systems just kind of crash, they go down. FirstNet gives first responders free wireless. So our phones will still work, will still be able to make those connections and communications. We reinvigorated our safety committee. It's comprised of 14 staff and faculty members. We meet quarterly, review injuries, incidents that occur on campuses. And then we make recommendations related to students. One of the things that we've been working on, and this is a group project with Andrew, with Laura, faculty, and then we have 4 students participate in developing our suicide prevention, intervention, and post-vention plan for the campus. Just trying to develop that education, that awareness, and what happens if the unfortunate happens, right? How do we respond? Emergency management. We have updated and revised our emergency response protocols, which are posted on our website. And then we are working with Deschutes County and the city of Bend to establish a more robust emergency operation plan that will dovetail into their plans as well, so we can all work together and communicate. And evaluating the emergency management position. And then future considerations, what are we looking at for the future? And technology is a big driver of that. And one of the things that we're looking at is external camera systems. And the analytics on the new external camera systems are very robust. They can detect a firearm on campus if it's not concealed and make an emergency notification to us so we can assist law enforcement craft their response to hopefully intervene and address the situation. Analytics also assist with like glass breakage, give us immediate notification, and then we can, with our remote devices, whether it's an iPad or a phone, we can actually look at what the camera is seeing. And again, contact law enforcement or what have you, depending on what the emergency is. And then this system would tie in with NPD's Real-Time Crime Center USIS program, which is a very robust system that they can actually operate from Bend Police Department and craft their responses by using the video cameras that we have. along with their drone, the emergency response team, officers on patrol, etc. So they would have access to that as well.
First, at AT&T, you have to have an AT&T phone to access it.
Yes, well, I mean, you have to be into their system, so you would have to,
But I have a Verizon phone, I couldn't do that.
if you go, I don't know, I don't know the answer to that, I don't know, maybe Laura, who's more. Like technology savvy that I don't know.
I'm sorry.
I'm retrieving a phone, so it's related to technology.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Doesn't matter.
I thought it would work.
Who's delivering it or what your phone is, it doesn't.
You just download the app.
Yes, that's correct.
The last point about the cameras is the consideration process.
Yes.
What does that entail? With budgetary?
So, yeah, so we brought some folks that are much smarter than I am on campus to look at where would be the best places to put those cameras. Once we get to a point where we're going to move forward, then we'll probably put out an RFP. We'll get some folks to bid on that, and then we will implement that program.
So, yeah, I wanna speak to that. As you might imagine, some folks get nervous when they hear camera.
Yep.
And so one of the things that Corey is really great at is communicating with any audience at any level of expertise. And so we will be having a lot of conversations with our campus about where these cameras are, what they do, what they can't do, what they're not used for. So hopefully we can allay some of those fears. I've said to Corey, you take the time you need to decide if this is the best route. But if he decides this is the best route, we will make that a priority to get that funded and implemented. And please disagree with me because you're the expert, but even if we get to the staffing level, and I hope we do, that's our goal, that Jim Ferreras recommended, we have to use technology to maintain really the optimal level of safety that we can have, knowing that, nothing's perfect. So Corey, if I misspoke, jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, we want to do this right. And we want to make sure that we take our time and be thoughtful about what we're doing with the camera systems, where we're going to place them. And just making sure that MPD's on board as well, so we can tie in with them because they're the one that's going to be responding. Any other questions?
No, it's the cameras, having implemented a public safety camera program before. Yeah, it takes time, but it's a force multiplier. And it really saves you money down the line and provides you with kind of unchallengeable facts. It's a great direction to go.
You don't have to convince me. I just, I try to respect the expertise. Corey, when you tell me you're ready to make that move, we'll do it.
For emergency preparedness, so I know we have plans in place.
Yes.
But there's a recommendation for a coordinator. So what would be the difference in what we're doing today as opposed to a coordinator?
So that would be a position that would probably serve a couple of different roles. One would be emergency management, one would be kind of an assistant director position. And looking at where we are on campus and what the needs are, because we have, we have to look at fire safety. We have to look at what would happen if we have an active shooter. We have the slip and fall and some of the things that come with, just the overall campus safety environment. So there's quite a few things that they would be involved in, and then be connected with Deschutes County and the city of Bend as well. So we have that communication piece and that coordination.
And we're in the consideration phase because what's kind of like, why wouldn't we just want that?
Right, so I was still looking at the staffing levels
Okay.
and seeing what makes sense.
Okay.
I don't want to put a position in just to have that position, so I want to be thoughtful with how we utilize our funds and our money before we just arbitrarily put positions in.
Okay.
So I want to make sure it makes sense for us.
And we do have those connections, so it would just be strengthening and having somebody very focused on it.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Joe Stetler at Deschutes County, you said one time what kept him up at night was, reviews
Yeah.
and the potential of a wildfire coming through here. We have a plan.
It's one of the things that keeps me up at night as well.
Okay.
Yeah, it really does.
Do you want to speak to it first?
You, feel free.
I might, yeah, okay. Well, I'm grateful to Chief Porter, because shortly after he got on the board, he said, wow, you got a lot of trees and a lot of brush here, and what do you do around wildfire prevention? And honestly, I didn't know, and you sent me some materials. And so we put our heads together, facilities, Michael Lalonde, myself, and Paula Simone, who is, she leads our fire science department and is super well respected in this area. And Josh Clausen is certainly doing all he can to address those issues and has been, but we know what we could do more. And so we've engaged with, thanks to Paula, the Project Wildfire Group, I think that's the name. And we are now going to be working toward a designation that you can earn if you do really well with wildfire prevention, call it FireWise designation. And I think another kind of side benefit of this is Paula's students are going to get to help in some of the assessments that'll be done on our campus. And you may say, well, why didn't we do this sooner? Because Jim's been on the board a while. The folks who run Project Wildfire, they were fighting wildfires until pretty recently. So
And they had huge staffing issues too.
yeah.
They're just like everybody, they had lost great clerk.
So we weren't, again, it was just to, try to address that. So, and I thank Corey for also bringing that more to our attention, because he's mentioned a few spots on campus to me and we've addressed those.
Corey and I lived through that. Yeah, which could be fire. We were 8 to 12 hours away from losing the west end of Bend. We just got lucky with timing of the night it was coming. And there's two predictive models. One model is for the second week or third week of September, the fire threat is from the north. After that switches from the south, we're evading winds. And there was no way they were, even with bombers, going to be able to stop the fire, except for Mother Nature give us a cool night, high humidity. I was in the command post, and Corey and I both, we slept in our office. There's some very good studies for our area that have been put out by FEMA and Deschutes County jointly about spacing of trees. People are going to scream about cutting trees down, but it's better than losing the college to the fire. And I've been going through that with my neighborhood association. And you would think that some of these junipers were grand sequoias. But these junipers, the hottest burning tree in the western US because of the oil content in them.
They're also water hogs.
Yes, and they're incredible fire spreaders.
Corey, do you want to add anything? Because I did.
Did answer your question.
Yeah, well, you're working on it. You got a plan.
We're working on it. Yeah, and I will say that I came from Sun River as the chief of police there, and I am so grateful to be here because that's different. Yeah.
And Joe Stetler is the one that taught our class for us and brought us up to speed on it.
Any other questions?
I love the synergy with one of our classes, one of our faculty members. That's fantastic.
All right, well, thank you very much.
you. Thank you, Corey.
May I just say while Corey's here, how really appreciative I am to have him here at the college. I think we just couldn't have gotten a better person. Everybody says to me, I don't go around asking how happy they are that Corey's here, how easy he is to talk to. He's so calm and patient. He helps people understand and listens and responds. And again, I just couldn't be more pleased. I think we got really, really lucky. And I love how he's working through these things, these issues methodically. And I remember when we first met over coffee, I was like totally nervous. and Corey was, you were sort of interviewing me at first, and that is, Lori, what does the college think about what this role should be? And because you were aware of the challenges that we've had. And I guess I answered correctly. We're on the same page and we know where we need to go and feel really grateful. So thank you.
Thank you.
And then I also want to mention Andrew Davis here. Andrew, when we didn't have Corey yet, he hadn't retired, he stepped in as the interim campus safety director. And can I say he didn't really know anything about too technical about it. Yeah.
Probably less than that.
Yeah. But as you heard, Andrew, with the residence hall and the student conduct, has dealt with some serious issues. And what he had was, I'm sure, boundless energy. At least that's what it looks like to me. But he had absolutely the right attitude, that it was about service and it was about listening and it was about understanding the role. And I am so grateful you were brave enough to step in. So thank you.
Thank you. So we are now on new business, and I believe that moves us to ready the board proposals, and coincidentally, Andrew and Alicia.
And we didn't really have a formal presentation plan because we provided quite a bit of details in the board resolution. So I'm happy to talk through that if that would be helpful for folks, or just answer any questions that you might have.
Alicia, since this is the first time that our new board members have gone through this process, I think it would be really helpful if you wouldn't mind sort of just briefly putting into context how we do this exercise every year.
Sure.
If you don't mind.
Yeah, so part of what we do, and you're gonna hear more, I think, in the January board meeting about student housing in the background, January.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Part of what we try and do is find comparator room and board setups in the state of Oregon, right? And a little bit out of state, sometimes it looks that way. It is really hard to find an apples to apples comparison. Because you might find a suite setup that's the same as ours, suite being SUIET.
Both suites, though.
Right,
really,
sweet, but their board package, their meal package is wildly different. Or they merge the two together and we can't suss out how they break theirs apart. Or they have single rooms or they have apartments. So there's really not a genuine apples to apples comparison. There's ones that are fairly close. There's others that we know, like Treasure Valley and Southwestern, who intentionally subsidize their housing because they have athletics and they require their athletes to live on campus or in their communities in Treasure Valley situation where housing is really sparse. So we first kind of go through that exercise to say, where do we know we are in comparison to some of our community college partners with student housing? Where are we in comparison to OSU Cascades and some of the smaller regional schools? And to the degree possible, get as close as we can to those, to our comparisons. And you can see that list at the bottom of that. Prior to a couple of years ago, we also built in an automatic, I would say automatic, a minimum of a 3% escalator for each year, because that project was new. Everything was expected to pay for itself, including developing a reserve. And a sizable reserve, not only for the building, but for food service operations. And, you know, a large commercial kitchen that can serve 300 people is expensive. And so a sizable portion of those increases were dedicated to those reserve funds. In this last year or two, since we've changed the funding model, and you'll hear more about that in January, we've not only hit that reserve mark, we've also started generating profit for the institution to help pay for the student housing operations. And so in years past, we normally would have brought you a little larger room and board rate that was still reasonable, still kept us competitive with our peers. But because we built those reserves up, we're recommending a lesser rate. The reason we didn't go to zero is because we know we still want to keep those reserves moving, because as the building gets older, the need for reserves is even greater. And we want to avoid going, and I'm going to make this up, zero this year, zero next year, and 9% bump, right? We want to have that be gradual over the course of time. So yeah, we do look at peer institutions. We do look at our internal operations. We do look at our entire budget for housing and food service, and that helps form our recommendation.
I don't think so.
You look really tall.
I know, I'm sorry. I didn't want to awkwardly do this. Being it self-belief.
Well, it's a great position to be in, so I'm glad that you have the strategy we have. And we're keeping up on the rooms and everything, the experience of the students is positive.
Absolutely.
Where did we land percentage?
For occupancy.
Yeah, occupancy.
Um,
Kind of constantly moving target.
It is
but
constantly
Yeah,
moving.
roughly.
we were high nineties. I'll say that confidently. Yeah.
Are there any scholarship students who receive a scholarship to be in the dorms or the residence halls, or is that just student aid that would fund that?
We have in years past, I don't know if we pulled it yet for this year, pulled students by Pell eligibility or financial aid eligibility, and we averaged about the first few years that we were open, was about 30% of the students had some sort of Pell eligible funds. We didn't look at all financial aid because it's just too hard to get our arms around, because almost anybody can take out a loan. Doesn't really show if that student has financial need or not, so that's why we limited it to Pell students. So whether or not they have a foundation scholarship, absolutely, there's folks that live in the hall who have that. And we also know that the residence hall, I want to say it's about 75% are out of district. So that also changes some of the dynamics in that sense too.
Andrew, help me, I should know this, the overpay dollars for application, how did we use those?
We use those to specifically help students who were struggling to pay the application.
That's right. So we have some funds that give the foundation for the application. So that was helpful.
Anybody have any other questions for Alicia? Okay, well then do we have a motion to approve the 2024-25 room and board rates?
Be resolved that the Central Oregon Community College Board of Directors hereby approve the proposed 2024-25 room and meal plan rates as shown in section A.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the room and board proposal. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, please indicate by saying no. Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you.
I look forward to the residence hall update. It looks like, I think we're getting to the point where it's a wonderful success.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident on that, yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so now we are moving to the donation of land in Madras. And it looks like this is Zach and Michael.
Yeah, I'll take it for the vice president who's in Arizona. But it's been super helpful with this, so you have the information, this is a tall chair, my feet barely. You have the information in your packet, and thanks to Paul Taylor as well for his assistance here. So, in speaking with Charlie Miller, from the right up there on the top row of pictures, about the Madras expansion campaign, he let us know that the Miller Lumberyard in Madras, which has been closed for a few years, was interested in donating the property to the college or the foundation for the proceeds of potential sale or subsequent sale to come to the capital campaign. And talking with Michael and Lori and the COPC Foundation Executive Committee, we determined it would just be easier and more streamlined for the donor to have their gift come directly to the college. There's also some time sensitivity around this to have it done by calendar year end. So we're very thankful to have this generosity from the Miller family and the LLC that the ownership group is part of. That's the name you see there in the packet. And so I can take any other questions about that, but the idea would then be to list as soon as we can, once we have the deed in January, working through the real estate committee to sell the property, and then put those proceeds into the capital campaign.
I think it's worth noting you got a title company to provide some reduced cost services.
We
did,
yeah, it was very kind of them. We have some friends on the foundation board who made that ask on my behalf, so I didn't have to, and they waived most of the fees.
Great.
Yeah.
What is the value of the property?
The recent appraisal came in at 410,000.
Nice little contribution to the project.
Now, whether I can't guarantee that will be the amount that it's sold for, but that's the appraised value.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Well, this is Joe Kernowitz.
Hey, Joe.
In regards to is there any land restrictions showing or? anything
Joe,
restricting? Go ahead.
yeah, there are, and Paul can probably address it better than I can, but it cannot be used for the sale of basically lumber, the business that Miller Lumber was in before. Right, Paul?
For a period of 5 years,
So-
of which 2 or 3 have already elapsed.
Okay,
And we are still waiting for the phase 1 ESA as well. We hope to have it. Well, it's been promised to us the week of Christmas. So it's a tight turnaround.
thank you.
We can express our gratitude.
Yeah.
to Charles.
Well, I express my gratitude to Charlie all the time. He's a friend, but yeah, I'll let you know and we can do that. I'll set up a way for you to do that. Yeah, but we'll let him know. And we will probably publicly promote this donation in some way or fashion once we know a little bit more about the transaction on the other end.
And who will be our honoree at Meal of?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit of a sneak peek. No, it is, so the
Can I
Miller
say, am
family.
I not supposed to say?
No, it's fine. The Miller family will be our honorees at Meal of the Year in April as well this year. That was not tied to
It's
this
not tied.
transaction. That was under
Done well
consideration,
before.
yeah, for a couple of years. So, just really, good year. We will share a lot more of this in the lead up to Meal of the Year, but suffice it to say, a lot of the institution's history and the foundation's history are tied to the Miller family, quite directly. The first gift ever to the foundation was from the Miller family, so it's fitting. So, thank you.
Okay, so do we need, I believe we need to
There is a
approve the
motion.
acceptance of the.
Correct, there's a resolution in the packet.
Would someone like to make a motion?
This is Joe. I would like to make that motion.
Awesome, go ahead.
So I would move that we accept this donation of land from the Charlie Miller estate.
As developed in section E in the resolution.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, okay, good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Noting none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please indicate by saying no. Noting none, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you very much, Zach. That's a nice thing to, and Michael too, thank you.
Thank you.
And Michael,
pleasure.
now we're to you again on the investment policy and internal controls and our first read.
I did prepare a quick PowerPoint to go over with the board, which you have seen before, but can everybody hear me and see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Kind of hard to see.
Well, you're coming from the heavens.
Okay, so what is an investment policy? An investment policy really gives direction to the institution on what the priority of the investments are. For example, is it to protect the capital of the entity, or is it to maximize returns? How important liquidity is? Who is responsible for what? How often does the governing body have to actually review the performance? What benchmarks are used? But it's really the overall document that dictates how investments are made for an institution. The policy is also adopted by the governing body, in this case, the board of the college, but also in Oregon, the short-term investment board must approve it as well. So the reason to update the investment policy is that the current investment policy that was modified a little bit last month was really outdated. I think it had been since 2015 since it was modified at all. It was very conservative. It talked about liquidity, the importance of liquidity, protecting capital as well, but also trying to maximize the returns under those parameters. But a new policy was needed, number one, and like I said, the old investment policy was modified a month ago because it had an associate CFO as the responsible person to run the investments day to day. We did not have that position at the college, so the previous investment policy was modified to put the VP of Finance and Operation in charge of the daily operation of investments. But the recommended new policy Once I saw the old one was a little bit outdated, I went and researched what kind of investment policies were recommended by community college. And the Oregon Short-Term Investment Board has a recommended investment policy. So the one that's being proposed follows that policy. It incorporates all Oregon revised statutes. It defines roles and responsibilities. It does allow for investment maturities longer than 18 months when we know that there's a project to use that money that extends that far out. It also contemplates broker-dealer advisory relationships and defines reporting requirements. It requires an annual review by the board, but most of all, it allows us to be nimble, and it allows us to maximize financial returns by making sure we're very conservative in how we invest the college's dollars. Just to give you an example of some of the investment comparisons just as of today, and I know the board's looked at this a couple of different times, you know, things change dramatically as the economy changes. So, you know, what happened recently is that the Fed decided not to increase interest rates again today. And so they also project that interest rates would drop next year. So currently our investments are held at the Oregon Short-Term Fund and have been for some time. That is paying 5%. Our US Bank, which is basically our checking account, they pay 2% plus fees. But there's just with treasury bills, there's all these opportunities to invest the college's fund, and 0.26% over what we're currently making in LGIP doesn't seem like a lot. But as they always say, if you multiply a big number by a small number, you get a pretty big number. So, I mean, we could make 0.26% more than we make now if we just invested in one month treasury bills. So that's the opportunity, and that's why we want a policy that's very robust and kind of directs us into what we can and cannot do. So the investment policy highlights are to preserve capital. Number 2 is to maintain liquidity. And number 3 is maximize returns by being very conservative anyway. It appoints the VPFO as the investment officer. And it does allow for investment advisories and does also allow for an investment committee if you were to choose to have one. Details of what investments are permitted are very robust in this policy. The previous policy was 1 page. The new policy is 14 pages long. So it is much more detailed. And then, of course, like I said, reporting and disclosure requirements are incorporated. Was there a question?
No, it's just, it's so dense, like as I was reading through it to not, I know we've talked about it, but this is a comprehensive policy, I feel.
It's awesome.
Okay, so
I geek out on this stuff, but I love this.
it's not my area of expertise necessarily, right? So like I had to read and reread and still I need somebody to explain it to me, right? So I know, I'll learn along with maybe other people or everybody's maybe already an expert.
Well, you want it to be detailed.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mike,
So-
wonderful, thank you.
Oh, sure.
Talk about the
I'll
control.
show you some of the changes that have been made in the draft policy. So am I sharing screen right now?
Well, I kicked you out because I thought you were sharing by accident, so you.
Oh, no. Oh, that was,
Sorry.
I have
gosh, Jen.
I know.
Whereas I'm not everything to find out.
Yes.
Okay. That's.
I don't want to go over the entire thing, but I just wanted to note on the current
Sure.
investment I'm sorry.
Oh, no, there's a
Typo.
there's a typo in there. So I did really read it. Oh, no.
Bye.
Where's the typo?
Keep going, and when we go to change.
Yeah, we'll show you.
Okay, Vice President of Finance and Operations, that used to say the associate CFO. So that was a change that you made a month ago. This is the recommended investment policy by the Short-Term Investment Board, who have already approved ours because we made minor changes to it. I only have to submit it to them for the record. But some of the changes that we did make were recommended by the board. Where are they? Right here. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Yes.
I increased the range of what I think the investments will be between 30 and 70 million, because when we receive personal property taxes for the college, that's pretty significant bump. And that's why I increased that spread, just in case it's a wide spread. Under some of the ORSs that are quoted in here, the model investment policy actually had a reference to an ORS that actually was repealed. Is that the right term? In 2015.
Yeah, and that's where we have the typo, because we still need ORS in front of the second reference.
Oh, okay, got it. Thank you. And I did talk to Short-Term Investment Fund Board or their staff, and they had no other ORS that replaced it. And I searched the internet and I couldn't find anything either.
And maybe they'll fix their form now, right?
I told them that and they said, thank you for the information.
We did a public service. Yeah, I know what thank you for the information means.
So Jim actually wanted the board approval of any changes made to the requirements of the policy and engaging a broker dealer. So I added that.
Who's Jim?
Porter.
Jim Porter.
I was concerned about oversight.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great
Checks
out.
and balances.
And same issue with this item right here. So I added that. And then there was just not clarity about who specifically was going to be able to the end of part of third-party safekeeping institution selected by, it said COCC. So to put the investment officer in there, clarify exactly who was responsible for it. And then finally, sorry about this. Previously, there was some reference to ratings, but it did not include all the different ratings that each agency could actually give. And it was in the table below, but it wasn't in this reference up here. So that was modified as well. The final thing that I was asked to do is to create, I'm sorry. Because we could invest funds longer than 18 months, we wanted to modify this paragraph so those investments would be excluded from this calculation in 11.1.
We could find ourselves in violation.
Yeah. So Laura is very thorough. Let me say that.
You might expect that from a lawyer, right?
Yep. So the other thing that was asked of me is to create an investment internal controls. So I created this document. It was really hard to find examples, but I put this together. And the whole thought of this is, we're trying to protect the organization's funds. We don't want to be mishandled, stolen, something done with those. So the biggest control objectives are to have segregation of duties. So segregation between who holds the securities, who accounts for the investments, who can actually make the investments, and then who has oversight of the performance of the investments. So that's what this document does. It talks about, the segregation of duties and then the procedural controls for the investments.
And I thought you did a really nice job, Michael, writing that, because you really did have to create it from scratch.
I asked the Short-Term Investment Board and their staff if they had any examples. some people that we know that invest money and they couldn't come up with anything. So I sent this to the short-term investment board as well. So if they get a request for an example, they have one.
Did they say thank you for the information?
No, they didn't, not enough at least.
I think Alan had a question.
In this document, you talk about instances when you need a two-signature approval. But you didn't say who the two signatures are. One would be yours, who would it be just the president?
No, actually within fiscal services, we have usually one person that can initiate a transfer, and then either Kathleen or I, we have a little token code. And then we have to go in and put the token code information in to approve the transfer.
Okay.
So as this is a first read, I Googled Robert's rules to make sure I remembered it correctly. We don't actually need a motion tonight. This just counts as our first read. And we will do a motion at the next meeting to approve it. Okay.
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, awesome. Does anyone have any questions for Michael or comments? Any additional questions or comments?
Thank you, Michael.
Yep, great job.
Thank you very much, Michael. Appreciate you doing this.
A pleasure.
Doing it very capably. So now we move to Board of Directors Operations, and Joe, don't want to put you on the spot, but can I start with you?
Yes, you can, and it's real quick and easy. I don't have anything to report.
All right, thank you. Erin.
Sure. On November 16th, I attended the foundation board meeting as our board's liaison. A couple of key things I want to report out on. There was an audit presentation from our auditors for 22-23. Overall, all good, business as usual. Really positive report from the auditors, and they did credit our foundation accountant, Karen. Hey, Moose.
Karen.
Karen, thank you. I wanted to say it
Karen
correctly.
Spar.
Thank you. Spar, they really credited her with her organization and attention to detail. So that's really encouraging. We've pretty, controlled operations within. Q1, we're tracking well against budget. The scholarship committee gave an update for 23-24. We had 125 renewed students, 250 first-time students. There were 1,035 applicants, so that means 25% of applicants were awarded. Of course, when we get increased applicants, which is really encouraging and exciting, that percentage then might drop if we don't have the funds to meet everybody's needs. But it's really encouraging to see the numbers that were granted and the number of applicants that we did have. There were let me see. Oh, there was some data on scholarship recipients, which I thought was really great. For fall to fall retention was 94.2% versus an average of 75.2 for the college, and GPA 3.34 versus 3.02. So, there's definitely data that suggests that these scholarships are meaningful to persistence and success of our students. We have approval to hire a grants assistant, so we'll have more support in that area, which is excellent. And then finally, a couple of dates. Many dates were announced, but Meal of the Year will be on April 13th and the President's Scholarship Celebration on June 5th, so mark your calendars. November 21st, I attended a meeting with Michael Lalonde with Jim Porter. It was a finance and fund review to just go over the school's financials in a smaller setting. So thank you, Michael, for that. And on December 1st, I attended the Student Success Committee.
Thank you. When I joined the board, Charlie Miller told me, he said, he was trying to encourage me to apply when there was a vacancy. And he said, you only spend 2 hours a month. Yeah. Al.
Yesterday afternoon, I attended by Zoom a OCCA diversity, equity, and inclusion meeting. It was good. I hadn't been to one for a couple of months, but I did make that one. and Christie was there too, and Christie adds a lot to what goes on at the state level. And on the Friday before that, I attended by Zoom also the OCCA board meeting. Our action items were to approve a executive search group to look into how we find a new executive director for the OCCA. To then also approve our legislative priorities, which really are kind of the same, look for money and protect the colleges. And also so approve some work on the building that they own, the house that they own in Salem. So I should be sending you these packets, and I will in the future. The next board meeting is Friday. That's all.
Thank you. Chief Order.
I also attended the meeting with Michael on the 21st. Very patient with me with all my questions. It was very enlightening and understanding. Does it?
Erin.
Mentioned last time that there would, that I was gonna be speaking at 2 events that were put on by the Newberry Regional Partnership. This is a new strategic planning effort in South County, Northern Clement County. They brought together more than a dozen regional partners, East Cascades, East Cascades Works, Deschutes County, just a wide variety of regional partners to help plan in areas like economic development, safety, recreation, and education. And they were hosting a couple forums on education, talking about everything from kindergarten through higher ed and workforce development. And so on November 14, we had a forum at the Pine Activity Center. And was pretty well attended. A lot of discussion primarily about elementary education, but some discussion about a desire for more presence from COCC and excitement over the online programs that we did really in recent years. The discussion on the 16th was in Sun River, and that was much more focused on higher education and sort of the way that high school students, the opportunities that high school students see as they're leaving La Pine High School, and their principal was there to talk quite a bit about the work that they're doing for students to get them ready to go on to be successful. And there was, just the theme in terms of our work from those were there is a desire for more partnership with COCC, both in those communities and through the Newberry Regional Partnership, as we think about what could a strategic plan look like around education, what would the higher education piece of that planning look like, and just a sense that education is not, there's not really a culture of education in South County right now, and that all of the partners who are discussing here what can we all do to help create more of a culture of people staying in high school, going on to higher ed, that kind of thing. It was really great discussions. December 1, attended the COCC Policy Committee with Laura and Erica, and we talked about what we might be up to this year on that committee, including thinking a lot about the committee structure here on the board, and possibly reviewing a number of other of our policies. And I'm sure you two will be able to add quite a bit more about that discussion. And then right after that, also on December 1st, we had our first COCC Student Success Committee meeting and talked there, had a great discussion about student success data that Lori and institutional effectiveness will be sort of helping us pull together to think more strategically and broader about student success and what that might mean in terms of our charge as a board and in partnership with staff. And then December 8th, College Affairs Committee last Friday. And that's just been wonderful to get to know a number of staff on campus.
Okay.
So on the 28th, I got together with Lori and Laura, and it was great to catch up on things. And then on the 7th, of December, I attended the OSU Cascades Advisory Board meeting. And we had a presentation from Beth Marino on the Laboratory for American Conversation, and it was fascinating. So if anybody is interested, I know. Like so good. And a lot of focus was on the workforce and career development and then community engagement of OSU Cascades. So the advisory board is kind of with the new president, seeing how it can best serve OSU Cascades. And I think there's a lot of interesting conversations going on. And then on the first, we had the policy committee, which always excited to review some policies, find some typos. but I think there are some stale policies that exist currently. And so a lot of opportunity to comb through them and to revise them to make sure that they're reflecting what we do and our current values as a board. So looking forward to that process as we go along. And then student success. So we had created a charter for student success committee a few years ago, and we had several meetings and we approved the it ends up being indicators, metrics for the accreditation, and then kind of came to a standstill. And so we took a look at the charter when we met, and it's still a pretty good charter. So we're going to explore it for every month. We'll meet for the next 4 to 6 months and then evaluate as a committee if we want to approach it differently moving forward. This goes back to the committee discussion that also links into the policy committee of what are our committees doing and how do they best serve the board and how do we move forward with them. But with new members on that committee, with new expertise and new eyes, I think we want to try it and see if it goes in a direction that feels like we're making a difference and we're contributing. And then we'll go from there. See, we need to do the proper evaluation, so gotta be methodical. But we have a lot of excitement around the data, if you can't tell from earlier conversations. And that's it.
All right, thank you. So on the 17th, I had the regular Friday check-in with Lori. On the 28th, I had the meeting with Lori and Erica. And then on December 1st, I had the policy committee meeting. And what I will say about that is that you all know that we have a policies and procedures. They're available on our website. I hope everybody has read them. They're good to read pretty regularly because they, in a lot of respects, govern the way that we work as board, how we do our work, how we meet, how we use our committees, what our committees do. And we want them to always be relevant and something that we all buy into. But the fact of the matter is they govern our activities until we change them, but we always have the ability to change them. So my suggestion, or I guess I should say our committee's suggestion is that, and I think Lori and Joe and I are talking a little bit about the January board meeting. And if we have time, we'll do it then. Otherwise, we'll put it a week later or a month later rather. But what I'd like to do is just at the meeting, review with everybody the policies on the key policies on how the board meets and operates, sort of what our obligations are as board members and our expectations of each other and how we interact. And then the committee structure and how committees operate. What is the reason for committees and how do the committees relate to the board? And the reason I'd like to run through those is because I think we had a general feeling that they're pretty good. And those policies were written relatively recently, but we want to just make sure we still have buy-in because they're so fundamental to how we work. And I found that policies like that and Robert's rules, frankly, can smooth over or help us navigate conflict when inevitably it happens. And so if we all have buy-in essentially in the policies as ground rules, I think that we'll all, we've all worked together, I think, pretty well so far, but I think it's better to be prepared, right? So I just like to run through those at our next meeting if we have time. If not, it'll be a meeting after that. And what the committee is going to do is any suggestions that come back for revising them and updating them will do, but otherwise, we're gonna spend a little bit of time on the specific committees that we have and whether we think we need any other committees or need to eliminate any committees. I know one thing that's high on my list is an investment committee, as we talked about at the retreat. And so we'll talk about that a little bit.
And board orientation.
And board orientation, 100%, which exists, but we really need to populate it and, yeah, okay. And then, so please be thinking about what your thoughts are on our current committee structure. Are there ideas you have for committees that we, because we will come back to the full board. We won't do anything until the board approves. That's how this committee works. But we love input. We want your thoughts on these things. And then we're going to prioritize those policies that are older and try to start working with them to update them and make sure that they're in alignment with our current goals and practices and preferences. So.
Well said. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And now we
Everybody's
turn it.
still awake.
Oh, really? Nobody's going. I don't hear any story. We are on the president's report. Lori.
I'm gonna make it short and sweet. I think you've probably heard enough from me this evening. Never, well, yeah. I just wanted to note that we're obviously starting to track enrollment for winter. And so in this past Monday's report, which is a point in time assessment versus that exact day 1 year ago. So we are up 10% in FTE and up 9% in headcount. That's a pretty good thing. That's gonna change. We all know that. So I just point in time this year, point in time last year, but I'll take it. I think that's pretty good. And then I wanted to ask Laura Bomey, our noble Chief Human Resources Director, to share a little bit about the pilot wellness program you folks in HR have initiated.
Yeah, so this was going to start, I have some notes, which I don't forget some of the details, but this is a trial program for our employees, our benefited employees that will start in January through August. And what it allows is every employee that is benefited there's a form, there's a process, all that, but they can request up to $100 during that period of time, January to August, towards a wellness activity. We have certain criteria that we've provided. It cannot be anything that our insurance covers. So if it were like acupuncture that our insurance covers, that is not eligible. But there are things like, let's just say you want to get a new pair of shoes, for running or your athletic, endeavors, then it could go towards that. It can also go towards personal enrichment stuff. So we're going to try this out and see how it goes. And we're hoping it'll be just another way for the college to attract and retain our employees. And people are really excited about this opportunity. And I want to give all of the credit, every single bit of the credit, to Karen Peters, who is our benefits and wellness manager. And we did put in for a grant, which I will also give credit to Sean Tevlin, who has written his heart out. We're still waiting to hear the outcome on that to see if we can have that continue. Anyway, so we're excited to see how that all plays out. So thank you, Lori, for
nice.
that.
Thank you for doing it.
Great program.
Yeah, it should be. And some of the data for that I didn't mention, Lori mentioned some of our, we've had maybe not a direct question on this in the great colleges to work for, but we did do through our CCDC committee, put out another survey about things that employees would like to see. And we know they want more wellness things that are more personal in nature, rather than us deciding what they are and just offering them. So this is a hope that it allows people to do what they consider wellness.
All thanks to Karen Peters and you for making that happen, and that's my report.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, so we have a few dates. I think there's obviously the real estate committees on there. I think that, and the audit finance committee. Importantly, note that Wednesday, January 10th is our January board meeting, and we have a work session ahead of time. So 1 hour next time instead of 2 hours. You will have to find something to do yourself between 3 and 4, but at 4, we've got entertainment planned for you. And then the board meeting, of course, is that evening. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of Joe, since he's not here in person, to wish everybody a safe holiday season and a wonderful new year and a great end of term. I know that's, well, we don't go till the new year, are we?
It's exam week.
It's exam week now, okay. Okay, so which I suspect is perhaps almost, or if not as stressful for faculty and staff as it is for students. So
Yeah.
I wish luck and good experience to everybody. And if there's nothing else anyone's got for the good of the order, then we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.